Hey everyone, and welcome. Today we're going to be talking about the show The Irregulars. Fun fact, the character Sherlock Holmes has been in movies for over 100 years because the first film came out in 1900. This show came out in 2021 and stars Harrison Osterfield, Thaddea Graham, and Darci Shaw, and was created by Tom Bidwell. So, without further ado, let's get right into it. The Irregulars tells the story of how these teens who live on the street start working with the infamous John Watson. As the series progresses, these cases that these kids are taking become increasingly supernatural. Netflix posted on their Instagram that if you like Penny Dreadful, Enola Holmes, or The X Files, that you would like The Irregulars. I thought this was a great grouping of shows to say what this show is going to be about because this show is basically a combination of all of those three titles that I just named wrapped up in one show. I love how this show is one where Sherlock Holmes and John Watson are characters in the show, but they're not the main characters of the show. I thought it was cool to have these, iconic characters take kind of like a backseat role in this show and have these kids in the limelight and showing how these kids are working to figure out what's actually going on and solve all these weird mysteries. I felt like in this show, Sherlock and Watson were both annoying characters. Like you have Sherlock, who is distraught over the loss of his lover, which I perfectly get, but he then turns to drugs and then completely disregards the child that he has with her, and even the child that he's supposed to be watching that his lover had before she met Sherlock. Then on the other hand, you have Watson, who is so in love with Sherlock. He tries to impress Sherlock, and he's the main reason why this whole mystical issue begins in the first place. I love how even though these kids had a rough life, they stuck together and really supported each other. It was really cool to see how they always had each other's backs and they all worked together to get the job done. I also liked how all of the kids had some form of role in the show. So you had B, who was the leader of the group. You had Spike, who was like the fast talker. You had Billy, who was the muscles. You had Jess, who was the connection to the supernatural. And then you had Leo, who was like the brains of the group. B was my favorite character on this show. She was a fierce leader and she was always looking out for everyone's best interests. I also love how she was not afraid to go toe for toe with Sherlock and Watson. I thought it was cool how Leo is actually based off of the real life Prince Leo, who was the youngest son of Queen Victoria. I thought it was also cool to see how in the show he has hemophilia, which is something that also that Prince Leopold had. I thought it was just really cool to see these connections to real life, even though this show has like a supernatural twist on it. I did feel like some of the things were a little bit predictable. For example, the White Linen Man. Like I knew he was going to be a villain. In the show, we see how he just kind of pops up and he like saves Jess. And I thought that it was really interesting that he was literally like her knight in shining armor. But then besides that, we knew nothing else about him. Then he decides to just hop on a boat and come to London to, help her out. And I was like, this is all sketchy. I was like, this is a villain. Like, and I knew that he was a villain from the beginning because like everything about him was just super sketchy. And guess what? I was right. I love the supernatural element to this show. It took the detective work up a notch because it was like not only were these kids going and trying to solve these cases, but they were also trying to solve these cases that had like a supernatural twist to it. My favorite episode of this season is the episode where we find out what happened to Bee and Jesse's mom. Up until this point, we just know that she had died, and when she died, the girls were put in a workhouse, and that was pretty much all we knew about her. In this episode, we come to find out, though, that she was in love with Sherlock Holmes, but then Watson's jealousy is part of the reason why she was killed and why the rip was opened in the first place. It was an interesting episode to see kind of this backstory behind what happened to their mom, why Sherlock was now a drug addict, and why Watson was reaching out to the kids and how he even knew about the kids. It's a sad episode too because we also come to find out that Jessie is Sherlock's daughter, but Sherlock hasn't helped with her at all. And then we also come to find out that Watson is the reason why their mother was killed in the first place, and he has not disclosed any of this to them. So it's an episode where we really learn a lot about the past between, their mother with Sherlock and Watson, but then we're also learning a little bit more about what Bee and Jesse have had to go through as a kid, being separated from their mother, and not knowing what else was out there. They didn't even know that Sherlock was Jesse's dad. So it was just a really interesting episode where you just learn a lot of backstory for the characters prior to where the show begins. I hope we get a season 2 because I would really like to learn a little bit more about Jess and more about her powers. It would be interesting to see, where her powers come from and kind of what are the limitations for her powers as well. I thought The Irregulars was a cool take on a Sherlock Holmes story while incorporating some supernatural elements. I thought the casting was great and it mixed some newcomers with some veteran actors and actresses, and I thought that they all did a great job. If you have not seen The Irregulars, I suggest that you go ahead and take a look at it because it's a pretty good show. Thank you for watching my video. I would love to hear your thoughts down below in the comments. If you have not subscribed, please do so you can keep up to date with more of my videos. But besides that, everyone stay safe, have fun, and goodbye.